All right, we are live. The first person to post a comment gets a free what?
Sandal, just one.
A free what?
Sandal.
Do you have a spare? I'll
My
need
daughter
both of
picked up.
mine.
It just came to mind because my daughter picked up a seashell that looked like a sandal.
Hmm.
Just one. Pretty neat.
Did she keep it?
She gave it to my mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably not on offer to give away to the first person to post a comment.
It immediately became a family heirloom. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I'm talking with Benjamin or something, who I mostly know as Benarubber, but I think that's a moniker you're looking to put some distance between you and it. Is that right?
Eh.
Yeah.
Initially, seventh grade, AOL Instant Messenger, and then it became every account that I made. And then a few years, I was like, maybe it's not a good thing to be tracked this easily.
Mm.
And then I like the name Benjamin, so that's about it.
Well, if you don't want to be tracked, that's kind of a full time job not being tracked these days. It's more than I care to, pony up the effort for.
Agreed.
So you have engineered a conversation between me and Anarcho Contrarian of the Doomer Optimist podcast, and I was under the impression that you were a regular host in that podcast, and it turns out that that's not the case. What's going on?
Yeah, that's funny. So, yeah, about a couple of years ago, right about when I got into your podcast, it was the John Michael Greer to Sea Realm pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And before John Michael Greer, I heard about him from Michael Dowd, and he was like he's a Christian. He called himself an eco-theist, and so that was like my sprint into Dumerism there. And then when I was having trouble sleeping, I found your podcast at like 3 in the morning when I was cleaning up the kitchen. I was like, "Oh, this is great. This is refreshing." He goes over to this end, and then he'll go to the other side, and he'll describe both ends. It was so refreshing. And I met Jason Snyder on Joe Brewer's online forum. It was the Regenerators. I can't remember the full name. It might just be Regenerators, or Regenerate something. So it's like basically a form of, it's kind of a peak oil flavor with environmentalism, a little bit of spirituality. But Jason's a little more sane in that he's not so into the spirituality. He does have his own history with it in Native American church, but basically, I've just been, you know, paying attention to people talk about Doomerism on Twitter and have enjoyed a few of their podcasts, and then sort of got less interested in it. And I've always wanted to blend you with them and hear you guys in the same room, kind of keeping each other sane. And
Okay. So
I'm a
Michael
little
Dowd and Jason Snyder, these are the co-hosts of the Doomer Optimist podcast.
no, I'm terrible at explaining things. Michael Dowd is his own. He would go around and do. He was basically a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and he stumbled on John Michael Greer's books, and so he was talking about him, his YouTube videos, and that's how I found John Michael Greer. And then when I was on Apple Podcasts, I searched, everything John Michael Greer, and I found an interview with him on your podcast,
Gotcha.
and I found you.
And then Jason Snyder, what puzzle piece does he occupy?
He's of the Doomer uh, Twitter here, where Joe Brewer is another pretty articulate fella who moved to Costa Rica. He made an online, like a social media forum for people to come and talk, and that's where I saw met Jason Snyder, and then we did a video chat with a few other people. And so I had been following Jason Snyder, and then Jason Snyder got into the Doomer Optimism podcast with a couple other people. But I'm largely, I don't feel like I have many smart things to say, so I don't make a point of trying to go and make videos of myself talking. But I've always
I
I've
do.
always wanted. You sure do, and I watch them all, cleaning my dishes.
Yeah, you're one of the folks who can hang with a half-hour video. I never set out to shoot a half-hour video, but I can just sit there and blather on.
I was gonna say I like these half-hour videos, and then after the second one, you're like, "Oh, this is terrible. I can't do this."
Well, I still edit them, and it takes a while to edit a half-hour video. And
Exponentially gets worse.
yeah, and then I look at the retention stats, and on the normal videos, like 40% of the people drop off in the first 30 seconds. And in the video I did recently that has gotten a lot of love from the algorithm, it's well over 1,000 views now, the Why I'm No Longer a Doomer, 60+% of the people drop off in the first minute, and only 17% make it to the end. So short videos definitely have their virtues.
Yeah, it's not surprising why that title kind of draws people. It's like,
Yeah.
you apostated? Let me see you apostated.
Well,
That's a
there's
verb.
another element as well in that Doomer is also like incel speak for a guy who is just, he's got a dark cloud hanging over him and he's completely given up and he thinks life is hopeless and he's not even trying. So it's a newer use of that word, and I think that the algorithm is pitching the video at people who are coming at it from that angle, and they hear me talking about the lights going out and collapse, and they're like, well, what is this guy talking about? And they click away. But when a video gets over a couple hundred views, because usually when I put one up, the first 2 or 3 days, it's 100 views, 130, somewhere around there. And once it gets above 200 and it looks like it's still going to be, picking up steam, then I'll monetize it. Because I'm happy to serve up ads to people I don't know, but the people who tune in for all my videos, I want to give them the ad-free experience. So I don't care if somebody sits through the ads and then clicks away in 30 seconds. Fine by me. I still get money. So
Huh, I didn't know that was something that you choose. You can choose after the fact.
yeah, you can. I don't, when I watch videos on YouTube, I don't necessarily notice who has ads and who doesn't. So it could be that I'm going to trouble and costing myself money to serve up a gift that goes unappreciated. I don't know.
As in, who is a YouTube subscriber and who isn't? Because I didn't get ads when I was a subscriber of YouTube. Is that what you mean?
You mean YouTube Premium or YouTube?
I think
Yeah,
that might be what it's called.
yeah. So you're paying not to see ads, so then you'll never know who's monetizing and who's not.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing about that is if somebody who subscribes, who pays for YouTube, if they watch my videos, then I still get, that's as if I serve them an ad. I still get paid for those.
Hmm.
It's
Nice.
a tiny amount of money. It's like $4 for 1,000 views.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
There's people who play video games all day, and they literally say, "I don't have a job. This is what I do, and I just talk about video games." And that's one way to do it nowadays.
If it works, I mean, if it pays the bills, I don't want to do that. I'm glad I don't. I'm glad that's not the situation I'm in. But hey, let's go back to Doomerism and your introduction to it, because I sort of renounced it. It seems like yesterday to me, but I went back and checked, and it was January of 2019. So the Doomer scene is evergreen. There is always an audience for it. And now that I'm not, providing content for that audience necessarily, at least not easy content, not unqualified content, new figures are emerging and I'm not paying attention to them. So there's, it's like I was into the UFC for a while, but I've been out of it for so long that I don't know any of the current fighters. Even though I had a deep interest in the topic at one time, I'm pretty clueless about the contemporary scene. You mentioned Michael Dowd and Jason Snyder, and those are just both names that I recognize from Twitter. And either the algorithm doesn't show me their stuff very often, or they don't post very much. But I don't see enough of their content to really even have a a feel for what they're about. I just noticed that every now and again, um, Twitter will show me that Jason Snyder has liked something that I liked. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think probably the fact that I follow you and you follow me, and that I like a good amount of his stuff is
Mm-hmm.
probably the algorithm's probably like, let's blend these together.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What I'll get a notification for something um, of just in a tweet by someone, and it's it kind of goes toward the things that I've sort of liked before, and then I realized that there's other people that I like to follow that I forgot about because I hadn't had them a notification. Then I have to make a point to go in and find what they're talking about because they kind of decided I should be cut off from that. But Michael Dowd, he doesn't post that much, and he's kind of like a late boomer, maybe 60s or 70s and stuff. So I don't know, he's pretty obscure. He wrote a book about like Christianity and environmentalism, how they're like compatible. I thought that was interesting initially.
That is, it's kind of contrary, to the modern, at least the modern American scene, in that people who strongly identify as Christians tend to be politically conservative, and politically conservative people are often, they sort of have a knee jerk aversion to left wing environmentalism. But at the same time, you get a lot of conservatives participating in habitat preservation, people like Ducks Unlimited. They want to go duck hunting, and to go duck hunting, there's got to be places where ducks can live. So they're among the most.
I think your connection cut out, or mine.
Effective. Seems like you can't hear me. All right.
Yeah, it stopped there for a sec. No, maybe I'm being caught up.
Once upon a midnight dream.
It's upon a midnight banded.
Dreary while I pondered.
Still waiting. Honey? Yeah. 96 years old is pretty good. Wrong kid died. Oh, Jackie's Endeavor. Huh. I'm not sure if that's my connection or his. Huh. I'm carried on the show here.
Oh, hello.
I can hear you now. Oh, it cut out again. The live counter's still going, so I guess it's recording. Oh,
I'm
should stop the game. See if that helps. Oh, now you're typing.
yeah.
I shut off my video to see if that would help. I don't know whose connection is worse.
Check, 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 check.
I can
Howdy
hear you.
doody. You can. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Okay.
Big.
Michael says, I'm digging this. Classic. All right. Hey, Michael. Guess what? I applied for a job today at the weed farm that is just down at the end of my road. There's a big old, it's one of 4 licensed grow operations in Arkansas, and they are hiring. So I have put in an application. I might be working with the glorious green plant every day of the week in the near future. We'll see.
What do they want you to do it?
Either I would be harvesting, tending the plants, in the grow warehouse, or they've got a dispensary in the next town over. I might be working there. We'll see.
Cool. We'll find out.
Yeah, well, the comic project is on hold, and that was it's like more than half my income, so I needed to replace it. You'll be a farmer after all, says Michael. Yes, yes, indeed. We'll see. I don't want to jinx it. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. All those good things. All right. Well, I think we're back. We can talk about Dumerism. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't remember who was talking and who trailed off into the sunset.
Let's see. Parker says, you might be part of the mentioned weed farm traffic. Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose I would be. So the road that I live on is a dead-end road, and there wasn't much traffic on it before the weed farm got built. And now, a few times a day, at shift changes, there's a whole stream of cars that come by. And one of them, the first one for the day, comes by before sunup. So I see the train of headlights on my bedroom wall. Anyway.
That's cozy.
Yeah, back to Dumerism. Maybe we should... Hey, Michael, do you want to join this stream? I could send you a link. It'd be interesting to get Michael's perspective. He's been listening to the C-Realm podcast since before I lived in New York. I met Michael in a tattoo parlor. I think he went to the tattoo parlor, the same place where I met Olga in 2011, I think. So let us know in the chat, Michael, if you want to join, and I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I wonder if I remember him from. I have the wrench on your YouTube channel, and maybe he was one of the many chatters in there. I don't remember.
He might have been. I definitely remember Les from
yeah,
Poland.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Notorious.
Yes, absolutely, like no filter. Then his polar opposite, Edward the Willing up in Montreal, who is the consummate, reserved gentleman. Who else was a regular on the stream? Parker's, of course. Yeah.
State Farm. Is it State Farm? They're always there.
Yes, that's right. Well, still the case. Typically, Parker is either the first person or even the only person to notice that I'm doing an interview and to chime in the chat. Let's see. Parker, yes, this is Ben a Rubber.
In the flesh.
In the flesh, or on the screen, anyway. So, we were talking about Dumerism. Benjamin, listens to the Doomer Optimism podcast, which I had intended to listen to prior to being a guest on the show, and I haven't actually gotten around to it yet. So
Well, I
Another
saw you
reason.
subscribe to the Substack. That might be better than anything. I don't actually listen to it that frequently. The main reason I wanted this to happen is I just want to have, you know, Ashley and Jason and you kind of, because you're both like, you're all, not all into it and pretty sensible about things. But I think they would decide to spend more of their time doing things with soil.
Doing things
Is
with
it
what?
with soil,
Oh,
growing
right.
things, and yeah.
Well, I was really into gardening when it was like even before I started the podcast. In fact, long before I started the podcast, when I still actually had Amazon money, but I knew I had to figure out a way to make money before the Amazon money ran out. I started reading the books of Michael Pollan, and the first one I read was The Omnivore's Dilemma, but then I went backwards from there and I read Second Nature, A Farmer's Education, or A Gardener's Education, actually. And then I read A Place of My Own, which is about him building a house by himself. And he's a book guy, he's a words guy, he's not a hammer and saw guy. So he wrote a book about that experience, and those books got me excited, and I really wanted to, you know, do homesteading and build a place of my own. And I was going to do it in Australia, but that didn't work out. And then I came back here and bought some land. And actually, before I bought the land, I apprenticed under a market gardener in Eureka Springs, this French guy he had 3/4 of an acre around his house cultivated. He was supporting his family from that. So he was really firing on all cylinders. And, later he bought a farm and bought some land and upscaled his whole operation and then destroyed everything by having an affair with a young woman, which destroyed his marriage and
Oh, snap.
yeah, wrecked his whole scene. He's back in France now. Um, anyway, I apprenticed under him, and I've spent a lot of time with my fingers in the dirt. But the last time I was really gardening seriously, I guess, was when Olga and I first moved to Vermont, and we transformed her yard, which had been just lawn, into a garden, and did it as a straw bale garden. So we did that for a couple years, but then I moved out into an apartment, and I haven't gardened since. And I have a place here where I could do it, and I just didn't get around to it this year. But it's
That's
not a
what it's
passion
been
for me
for
like it
me.
was.
Yeah. Well, the amount that it's been a passion for me has been about, 2 years of gung ho,
Mm-hmm.
and then just uh, there's either it's a limit of time or the yield that you get is doesn't, doesn't make you feel like you want to keep doing it. Right now, I'm scything a field. Um, we have a backyard here with a large tree, so there's not a lot of sunlight. I've pretty much found that I can easily grow to my own comfort level garlic and potatoes, and then scything this field is
Oh,
kind
I
of just,
remember the scythe, yes.
yeah, it's good exercise. But if you enjoy playing video games in your free time, you got to choose one. So, and I go back and forth.
So Parker says, I think about your note taking when you read books and how I would remember more if I did that. You know who is the master note taker is Jim, your ad attacker of the Attack Ads podcast.
Yeah.
He is the superhuman athlete of note taking. But I have a new toy. Check this out. This is a Remarkable 2, and it
Is that
is
digital thing?
it's e-ink.
Oh,
It's like a Kindle, so it's got great battery life, and it's meant to keep you off the internet. It doesn't have email. It doesn't have a web
yeah.
browser. You
Twitter's
can,
not going to pop in the top and be like, "Oh, this person said this. You want to touch that?" Well, you meant to
yeah,
hit this thing. It pops right down at the right time, and you touch it. It's like, "Oh, fuck."
right as you were going to do something else, yes, it pops up a
Yeah.
little notification.
It's like,
Yeah,
okay, I'll look at this.
it doesn't make any noise. It doesn't have any speakers in it, and it's all handwritten driven. And you can export your handwriting to be converted to text in the cloud, and then it'll come to you
Oh,
as an email. But not on this device. This device is input only, really. And
oh.
you can also use it like an e-reader. I mean, you can send PDFs to it and things. And then the cool thing about it is you can write on the PDF itself and take notes there, or you can insert a page to the PDF, right where you want to take notes. So it's a productivity device. I just got it, so I can't say that it's changed my life or anything, but we'll see.
Can you put a PDF on it and then draw on that PDF?
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Alrighty. So yeah, me babbling about my new piece of tech. So clearly, I've got some enthusiasm for ongoing improvements in technology, and that was something that a lot of doomers just didn't have any patience for. They didn't want to hear about your devices.
Well, that makes me think of a definite shift in me as far as like fossil fuels are corrupting a spiritually corrupting thing. That was a mindset of mine, and the more I kind of saw how the world worked, I guess, and definitely after COVID, I can't. Yeah, I think it was after COVID. I got to a point where it was like, if I can make something easy on myself by using the weed whacker or clearing the driveway with the snowblower, as much of an fu to the people who try to make regular people's lives impossible, I'm gonna do that, even though I'm even like halfway on the climate change aspect, because it's like either you implement authoritarianism for it, or you live in a world where you accept your neighbors choose to spray their lawn with all sorts of poisons, and I'd rather they do that than have crazy measures to put them in jail or whatever, because no humans are gonna, there's too many of us and we're not gonna agree on all this. um, so yeah, I just started using fossil fuels and feeling good about it, just like how, like, my mother loves shopping, and she would, with the recycling coming up in the 80s or whatever, she would just feel good about throwing something away, and it's I kind of feel like it it's such of a self detrimental thing to always be doing things the hard way when these elites are just gonna fly in jets anyway. And you described it in some, I don't know, 2019, a couple of years ago, pretty well. Like, these people are still gonna do what they're gonna do. So
Well, John Michael Greer had a great blog post talking about this environmental conference that was only for the ultra wealthy to attend, and it was in the Mediterranean somewhere on some island, and there was all these private jets flying in for the occasion, and they had yachts and a fleet of Maseratis for people to drive around the island in, and it was just this ultra luxury affair, so that the wealthy and the elites can all get together and complain about how much energy and food and everything that the poor people are wasting, and how the poor people need to live smaller existences, so as not to threaten the planet or harm the planet. And I'm like, how there is like zero self-consciousness on display here. And if the marching orders come from people with this particular mindset, it's like, just out of contrariness and orneriness, I'm going to say no. I'm not interested in that game. I am not playing. Let's see. Parker says, something I thought about recently was the similarity between the near apocalypse Christians and the doomers you talk about. And an interesting thing about that as well is that the techno utopians, the extreme, the singularitarians and extreme transhumanists, they expect an apocalypse type event, but it's more of a rapture, where everything is made better in a moment. And it might seem disastrous for the ignorant, but that's just because you're ignorant. But really you're going to be uploaded into digital heaven and all will be right. And so both the extreme doomers and the extreme anti-doomers, they both have elements of Christian millenarial thinking, in their worldviews.
yeah, that's if I was more well read, a good rabbit hole to go down. I think it's interesting. I'm not up on the Bible and stuff, but there is, as far as like homeschooling goes, before COVID, I think like a lot of the liberal Seattle tips were like, Well, not necessarily though, because there's also, the Christian homeschooling. Because homeschooling is often conflated with being actuated with like a lot of Christian sort of stuff. But
A lot of homeschoolers are doing it for religious reasons. Yeah.
yeah, home birth is another thing I think is interesting. I'd like to see kind of get more popular. My wife and I actually we had a planned home birth,
Both my kids
and
were born at home.
wow, really?
Yeah.
Because you felt like it?
Well, ultimately, it was my wife's decision, but I supported it.
Wow, that's cool. It's a lot easier. We have a lot of horror stories of our friends going to hospitals and the doctors. It's just a hectic situation.
Yeah. Yeah. We had midwives in attendance at both events. The first one was in a birthing pool, and the second one was just on the bed.
Yeah, we had the kiddie pool set up, but then it was on the couch right there.
Well, for me, I mean, the most recent one was 18 years ago, so it's been a while.
Yeah, yeah. It was
So,
3.5.
um, back to the Doomer Optimists. Um, I was just thinking, like, I read some of their materials, and they've said things that I've said, things like, whatever preparations you make, they need to make sense. They need to be things that you would do even if you didn't think collapse was coming, because it might not come, or at least not on your times, on your schedule. And so you don't want to do things that are going to hamper you, if collapse doesn't come, which I totally agree with. And I think maybe there would be a sort of artificial or label induced antagonism between me, who claims to be an ex-doomer, and they who claim to be optimistic doomers. Like, they think collapse is coming, but it's a good thing, and I'm like, I'm not so convinced that it's coming anymore, or not soon enough to be relevant to me making plans for my life. But I think there's probably going to be a lot of agreement and a lot of overlap.
Yeah, label induced antagonism. Well said. I was wondering about that myself.
TM, trademarking that phrase right now.
Yes. I'll put it on that digital thing you got there.
I'm going to do that actually right now. It's
Yeah, that's also something I was thinking definitely wanted to share is how even before your influence affected my outlook was how much I'm not comfortable taking large risks.
mm-hmm.
And so when I was into that mindset that, we need to just cut fossil fuels off and deal with the consequences after, like that was like 2015, I think, 2016, because I was worried about carbon emissions because I just graduated college. And it's, what marinates in you. I still, I wasn't gonna not have a job and then try to make things work in the backyard and all that. So, in contrast to what you had described in another video, where you said that it affected your marriage, and I don't know how much your daily lifestyle changed when you're in mindset like you were ready for collapse to happen. But for me, I was like, all right, so I'm going to keep my full time job and play the game in this system. And with the little free time I have, I'm going to try to learn about growing food. And after a couple of years, there's only so much you can do. So I never dropped my full time job. I didn't just go all in like you had warned not to.
Good. Good to hear. Because it is tough to pick up the pieces when you finally realize, oh shit, this isn't working.
Right.
Yeah.
But I still got my scythe and it's good exercise.
Yeah. And it connects you to a long line of people stretching back hundreds of years.
Mm.
You'll probably never kill a wild boar with a spear, but you'll certainly never kill, an extinct animal like a cave bear or one of those giant elk things. But you can swing a scythe and connect your bodily movements and the sensations that it provides to a long line of people who didn't really want to be doing it, but it was part of staying alive.
It doesn't follow conversational rules so much, but I was just reminded when I was scything once, I was listening to a conversation you had with um, unregistered
Right, Joshua
Thaddeus,
Slocum.
no,
Oh,
Thaddeus Russell.
right, Thaddeus Russell. Yes.
Yeah, that was a great, like, you guys had a conversation about air conditioning. Or when I got to that, I was like, this is good. I don't know who I agree with more.
I don't remember that conversation so well. Other than I asked him about his position. I mean, he's written a book about slavery and how the evils and the terrors of slavery have been greatly exaggerated, and
Right.
that
I still need to
slaves.
listen to that.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a dumb thing for me to ask right off the bat because he wrote a whole book on the topic. So, he gave a rather long answer, and all of it was familiar to me because I had listened to a good part of the audiobook. And so our conversation was like, didn't really even get started until 20 minutes or so into the conversation. But then once I would need to revisit that thing because I don't have a very clear recollection of what we talked about.
Something about air conditioning.
I was going to send you a code. Can you tell me what it is?
Oh, okay. Well, so my wife actually does more in that vein. She has a shop where it offers all options for minimizing your waste. It's a reuse refuge is
Mm-hmm.
what it's called, and so you can bring in your container, and they focus on like things you use every day, house supplies, sponges that are compostable, toothbrushes that are compostable, and your dish soap, your detergent, body soap. So, she's still holding on to like the Dumerism that I had, but she actually like made it productive. And as where I moved away from it, and I'll just like use a plastic bag here and there. So it's pretty cool.
I go to Walmart most days, and I walk away with what's known as the Arkansas State Flour, which is the Walmart bag.
Get it?
That's good. Oh, my wife's trying to. Yeah, I got it. She's doing a PayPal code here.
You might want to mute.
That's all right. I'm just sending a message.
Oh, okay. I see.
I'm on a podcast, dear. This is 2022.
Yeah, whatever.
You're on a live stream. I'm probably not going to edit it down to a podcast.
Cool.
So Parker says, do you compost your toothbrushes now? That's cool.
We do. They don't go in there too often. How long do those brushes last? Months. Maybe we're unsanitary. Maybe they should be.
I think technically you're supposed to replace them every like 3 months or something.
Oh,
But I go until the braids look like crazy weirdness.
every 3 months. Yeah. Yeah, we have a drawer. One of our top drawers in the kitchen where you cut food is where we have like a plastic thing. You pull out the drawer and then you just shove it in that drawer. And I go out once a week and then shove it in the ground. I don't do a fancy composting thing, but I just dig one little dig with the shovel, put it in there, and then the worms go to town,
Right
making
on.
shit out their goodness.
Mm-hmm. I use an electric toothbrush, and it came with two heads, and I was supposed to replace one after so many months, and I lost the replacement head, and I've just been using the same one for, I don't know, 2 years or more. And this thing has the most amazing battery. I've charged it for the second time since I moved to Arkansas just the day before yesterday. But it goes months on end on a single charge.
That's alarming.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I want a phone that does that.
I don't use an electric toothbrush anymore. The best thing they're for is to get popcorn kernels out of your tooth. If you have something stuck in there, you just vibrate it out. It comes out like butter.
Yeah, no, I use it every day. Why not? All right. So, how did you discover John Michael Greer? What was the beginning of the chain?
Michael J. Dowd.
Okay. All right. And he's
There's another
the
Michael Dowd though. You got to watch out. Let me make sure.
Well, I might have them confused.
He's a neat fella. I gave him a call once, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to help you with your podcast," and then I never got around.
How'd you get into podcasting? What was your first podcast?
I think it was Sam Harris. I was listening in 2015, Making Sense podcast.
Yeah.
I never made a podcast myself. I was just always listening to them.
There's a MB Dowd that I'm not following.
Oh, I think that might be it.
Oh, I am following him, actually. But either he doesn't
Is
post
it a-
much or Twitter. He says, I'm a post-doom shaman in the
Yep.
end of the world as we know it tribe. I help people understand what's real, fall in love with life, and have relative equanimity in the midst of collapse.
Yeah, that's definitely him. Post Doom. He has a whole Post Doom series on YouTube. I that shaman. That's a new thing. I haven't heard that he had considered himself a shaman. But I have a level 70 shaman in World of Warcraft, so maybe we have more common
Oh, badass.
than I expect.
So his most recent tweet is a link to a video, Collapse in a Nutshell, Understanding Our Predicament.
Yes, that'd be his latest YouTube on his YouTube channel.
All right, well, I will click through to that.
Yeah, there's sort of their academic feeling, but he's a pastor type, so
Getting here on YouTube, and then I will subscribe.
so him and Joe Brewer are friends and of the same mindset. And both of them I thought were very interesting.
Okay, so I'm sending myself a link to his most recent podcast. Not podcast, his video here. Collapse in a Nutshell, Understanding Our Predicament. Oh, this is November 8th, 2021. Okay. And it's 33 minutes long. That's doable. It's probably much more organized than my 33-minute videos, which are just blah, blah, blah. I had two things that I meant to say, and then in the course of saying them, I thought of 10 other things to say, which I hadn't planned to say, so I don't really have it worked out, my exit strategy. Let's see.
I'm someone who appreciates that.
Oh, good.
His Michael Dowd's videos they're usually slideshows, and I found one in 2019, 2020 that just blew my mind. It was something about the reason for evolution or something, and he's basically he would just cite the authors that he's read, and one of them was John Michael Greer, and
Okay.
a lot of his videos he'll do another one, but it'll same thing again in a different way.
It's hard not to repeat yourself.
Right. Yep. Actually, I know COVID happened. I was paying attention to what he was doing. He moved to, I think, Michigan to be with his grandchild, and he said he was ready for the world to collapse in about 10 years. So, but then again, he did say that when Y2K happened, he was ready in the same mindset he was going to go down. So he's, the type to where it's not long now.
Yeah, for decades on end.
Yeah.
So I just noticed that Parker has posted a comment to my most recent video, which was Evergreen Predictions of Climate Doom. And he writes, one example of a political effect of climate change. The two hurricanes/storms that hit Honduras in 2020, Eta and Lota, are reported to have displaced over 100,000 people. Climate change likely made those storms worse. The people whose villages were destroyed or cut off because roads were destroyed were desperate, and many fled north to the U.S. This surge of immigrants from Central America were then used by the Red Tribe to back Biden, or to attack Biden. These immigrants were said to be clearly Biden's fault. I believe that this strategy worked for the conservatives. The message got out that Biden was responsible for the wave of illegal immigrants, and many people believe that it is so obviously true that any other argument about it can be quickly dismissed. The hurricanes are unknown or forgotten if they were ever known about. Will this one issue be enough to change politics? I don't know, but it is an example of the type of dynamics that likely climate-induced disasters put into motion. All right.
Climate exacerbating politics.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was the same stream of people that he was talking about, but I guess it was early last year. There was in the news this caravan of people coming up South America, coming up Central America, through Central America to the U.S. border. And they were being supplied by volunteers, many of them Americans, along the way, giving them food and water and sometimes rides and, basically giving them encouragement. And somebody, like a reporter, clearly maybe not a local, he might have been American who was sent down there, but he was clearly a Spanish-speaking reporter, was asking the various people, in this caravan or in this group that was heading north, why are you going to the United States? And every single one of them said the same thing. They're saying, Joe Biden has invited us. He said we would be welcomed. And so, they might have been set in motion. Oh, I should say that this reporter was reporting for Steve Bannon and his War Room, daily show. And so either the reporter was mistranslating, or these people had been coached in what to say, or there really are people, who are conveying the message, hey, come to the U.S. Joe Biden says, come on over. And, it is to the advantage of a lot of different groups who have different agendas, but to bring in a lot of new immigrant labor to, put downward pressure on the prices for labor, to, make Americans have, Native Americans have to compete more, for lower status and lower wage jobs. And so usually, it used to be until there was a clip of Bernie Sanders running for president in 2016, and somebody asked him about illegal immigration, and Bernie Sanders was saying the obvious. You have to control the border. It is the cheap labor Republicans who want to bring in as much low-skilled labor as possible, to dilute the bargaining power and the wages of working-class Americans. And then in the 2020 election, he had totally flipped the script, and he was reading from the woke, cue cards, saying, oh, we support the new immigrants, come on in, the wall is evil. Something I found that was hilarious, though. Who was it that was making this argument? Oh, it'll come to me. But somebody I was watching just recently was making the argument that, it was Peter Zion. He said, to build the wall, you had to go into the Sonoran Desert, which is this impassable, for the most part, just really brutal natural barrier between the United States and Mexico. And you had to build a network of roads through it so that you could get the construction workers down to the border to make the wall, which ultimately the wall is easy to get over or get under, or get through. But once you're on the other side of it, now there's this handy network of roads that got built to, support the building of the wall, which takes you to civilization, whereas before you had this desert to cross. So,
damn it.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like that would have been all that hard to anticipate, that would be the effect, but the wall was always symbolic. I don't think any serious person who understands the dynamics of economic migration thought that the wall would keep people out. It just doesn't,
Yeah.
To keep people from crossing a border, you have to demonstrate you are willing to kill them. If you put in machine gun embankments there, it's like, that's what they did in Berlin. There was a wall, but people could still get over or past or through the wall. If they did, the East German guards or the Soviets shot them dead. That's what kept people in East Berlin. It wasn't the actual physical barrier of the wall. The wall, if you tried to cross the border without permission, slowed you down enough that, they could get a good shot. So, but to keep people from crossing borders when their economic well-being requires that they cross the border, you have to demonstrate that you are willing to kill people. And the United States, there's no way that's going to happen.
Go ahead. The last I remember thinking about the wall very much was when I read Jason Hickel's The Divide, and it described a lot of the ways that colonialists pillaged the Central American countries and all that, and it sort of ends the book with blaming colonialism in America for like the state of their desperateness to want to migrate up here, and he's his own. I've never read the rejoinder, to that, so I can't contribute much intelligence to that. But I did enjoy the historical detail that he went into in that book, where he talked about the was it the CIA, putting in different puppets that if they got one politician that was advocating for healthcare or education, they would put someone else in that was against that. Um, but I don't know. That was one book I read.
What was the title again?
The Divide.
The Divide. Do you remember the author?
Jason Hickel, Hickel, and that was before I took notes with books, so I don't have detailed notes.
Note taking is helpful.
He was interviewed on Russell Brand's podcast.
I like Russell Brand. The Divide,
Yeah.
a brief guide to global inequality and its solutions.
His book after that I didn't read
Mm-hmm.
because I was less interested, but I think it was basically about degrowth. I don't know how I feel about degrowth anymore, but I used to think, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Growth improves the standard of living for people in poor countries.
Oh yeah, and one of the big things that Jason Hickel talked about was how silly the poverty line definition was, and he actually he wrote an article basically taking apart all of Steven Pinker's points in his book. Steven Pinker's book was like Things Are Better Than They've Ever Been, or something like that.
Better Angels of Our Nature?
No, it was after that.
Ah.
It was so because Steven Pinker's book was describing how we've raised people out of poverty all over the world, but then Jason Hickel's approach was your definition of poverty is people are living on $1 a day. That's kind of pathetic. But then you also have the other side of that is Charles Eisenstein describing how people's standard of living is good without a certain level of industrialization, and you can't win nowhere.
So Jason Hickel's next book was Less is More, How Degrowth Will Save the World.
Yeah. All right, we're going to save the world.
Yeah. Let's see. Part 1, More is Less, Capitalism, A Creation Story. Rise of the Juggernaut. Will Technology Save Us? Part 2, Less is More, Secrets of the Good Life, Pathways to a Post-Capitalist World. Everything is Connected. So I will say that...
Enjoyable author.
Yeah, I will say that capitalism is it's a vague, nebulous word, but the economic system in which we live, which requires people to either participate in or generate some sort of economic activity so that they can have food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and a bit of respectability and dignity. It always wants us to do more, and that includes buy more. And in order for us to be constantly willing to buy more, we can't be satisfied. We can't be happy with what we have. That's just not, that is absolutely contrary to the entire modus operandi of consumer-based industrial capitalism. You can't have people being content and satiated. They always have to need more. So it would take, if the goal was to provide everybody with quality of life, which means satisfactory interactions with other people, a feeling that you are needed, a feeling that your contribution matters, that you are skillful, that you play an important role in your community. All of that, if that was the explicit goal, to provide those things to everybody, would be a lot less expensive. It would require a lot less material input than what we have now, which requires infinite material input, ever growing material input, in order to keep people on this treadmill of, oh, I need to buy one more thing and then I'll be happy. I need to fill this. We basically need to keep people isolated, atomized, and just dissatisfied and lonely. Lonely is not necessarily a goal, but it is an inevitable consequence of keeping people atomized and not really forming, strong and coherent community structures. So I could probably agree with Jason Hickel on quite a number of things, even if at first, when I hear things like degrowth, I kind of roll my eyes because, there was a time when I was really into that stuff and now I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could be plausible, but America was started out of a loan from France, right, to fund the Revolutionary War. So, Morris, I think Robert Morris was like a early oligarch, and we've always been under we've always been the bill has always been paid by people who have their own interests, and there's no way to reverse that. And the powerful are gonna kind of dissipate and remain behind the curtains to a point where it's stylistic, but I don't know what you can do about that. They're gonna stop things that threaten the way things are. But I don't know. Maybe that approach of the degrowth could work, but I just don't see how it could change to that.
Well, you got to find a way to make it attractive. If you want people to participate in degrowth voluntarily, you have to find some angle or some light in which to present it that makes it attractive.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It makes me think about my wife's shop because she offers things that are, reusable. So you buy it once. So she's not going to keep getting paid for that thing. And it's counterintuitive. So her business is the viability of it is a little contradictory. But if the culture is into that, then that's another thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, durable goods, they're still kind of a thing. When you buy a refrigerator, you expect it to last 20 years. So there are some items that we're still, they're not disposable and they're not designed to break down after a few years. It is a model that used to be the norm and could be again, I think. I'm looking at the post-Doom website. It is a very attractive website, I have to say.
Yeah, it is.
Doom is coming, but in the meantime, I'm going to pay a web designer to build me a kick-ass website.
Yeah, he had so many interviews with a lot of interesting people.
Conversations. I've just
Yeah,
clicked on it.
I used to soak those up. He actually on SoundCloud he on SoundCloud he used to just read articles, and I would just listen to him reading articles.
Well, I usually don't read whole articles. I'll read portions of articles and then summarize, but I do a fair amount of that sort of thing on the Vault.
He actually read a few of John Michael Greer's books all out on SoundCloud.
Wow.
Like, you didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, that sounds illegal, but
Yeah.
Uh,
And what was the yellow book overdrawn? Overshoot. He read Overshoot.
William Catton or Cotton.
Yeah, yeah. And he interviewed William Catton shortly before he died.
So I'm looking through his list of guests, and there's a few people that he's interviewed that I've also interviewed, and many that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
But I have interviewed for sure Carolyn Baker on numerous occasions. and Richard Heinberg.
Gail Tverberg. I actually met her at Wells College.
Yeah, I met her. I was looking at a picture of me and Gail Tverberg at ASPO 2011. I was looking at that just the other day.
Just a sweet old gal.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's Michael Dowd. Derek Jensen. Definitely interviewed him a time or two. There's Joe Brewer, who I have not interviewed. James Howard Kunstler, who I've interviewed many times.
He hasn't put out a podcast in some months. I'm wondering about it.
Huh. Honestly, I don't listen to his podcast anymore, not regularly. And every now and again, I will read his blog posts, and he's definitely throwing red meat to the Doomer crowd now.
Yeah, the past year, I'll listen to like 10, 15 minutes of his podcast, and it's like, I've heard this before. It doesn't feel fresh, but I really appreciate his work as far as like geo. I can't remember that book. Geography of Nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's neat.
Well, Geography of Nowhere was even before the Doomer turn for James Howard Kunstler. That is probably the book that he will be remembered for, going in the long run. I see that Michael Dowd has also interviewed Steve Keen. I've interviewed him in person repeatedly, usually at these conferences in Michigan, the Local Futures Conference.
Mm.
Yeah, and then all kinds
Local
of people.
Futures. That's Helena Nordberg Hodge.
Yep, interviewed her. Let's see. Huh. And then there's people that I've heard of and I've heard them speak, and I try to remember, have I actually interviewed this person, or do I just like have this false memory of interviewing them? Because I'm familiar with the topics and I'm familiar with their voice.
So many people, could be everywhere in between.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Well, hey, we've been on for an hour, and I'm usually not an evening person. I'm usually just vegging out in front of the tube at this point.
Yep, I'm ready to go horizontal and be unconscious.
Okay. Well, hey, man, I will talk to you again on the Doomer Optimist podcast.
Yeah, was that the 22nd?
Yes.
I think. Sounds good.
Parker
good to talk
says,
to you.
last time I looked, I guess he means, I looked at JHK's blog, he was still going on about Hillary Clinton. He is way off the rails, in my opinion. Nice to chat and be here for the stream. Well, thanks, Parker. Oh, and Oswald, I didn't see his contributions to the stream. What does he say? Does Benjamin differentiate Doomer optimism from apocalyptimism? Or as described by one Hambone Littletail? I can't really even say I understand that question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like apocalypticism is more severe, as in like it's all going down. It's all going down. It doesn't matter. But it's funny, like Dumerism is its own thing, but when you put optimism at the end, it's kind of like it. When you could do what you can, but don't go crazy.
Well, the apocalypse is a religious term, and people use it interchangeably with the idea of cataclysmic destruction. But as I understand it, really, the apocalypse is an unveiling. It is a revealing of the imminence of God. So I think that's a term that's kind of been bastardized and bowdlerized by popular usage and doesn't really mean anymore what it's supposed to mean.
As far as I know, the Doomer Optimist community don't delve so much into spirituality. They do talk about it, but they don't advocate that it's crucial. So, like, I think Joe is a different Joe, and I can't remember his last name. He there's a couple that are into like spirituality is crucial, but mostly I hear from them that it can get messy, when you advocate that that's like the thing you need.
All right. Well, we were gonna wrap it up. So
Yeah,
thank you, Benjamin. I will talk to you again soon.
yeah. Night, everyone. Sleep good.